Hi, I'm Debbie O'Connor, and I'm here to talk to you about three different methods of teaching writing today with their different strengths and weaknesses. Um, Writing has undergone a bit of a revolution since I was in school 30 years ago. When I was young, it always seemed like writing was a magical gift that only a few had, and either you did or you didn't have this wonderful talent. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that writing is, in fact, a craft that you can master. It takes work, it takes practice, it takes writing in order to write. And today, as I talk to you about the different methods of teaching it, I hope that you'll be able to glean some of the best things out of all the methods because all of them do have merit and use them in your classroom. Thank you for listening. The first method of writing instruction that I want to talk to you about is the product-based method. This was the predominant method of teaching writing when I was in school, and up until just a few years ago, it was also the predominant method of teaching writing in Great Britain. There are many strengths to this type of instruction. You start with a model text. You take apart that model text. You discuss it as a class. And you identify the different strategies the author used to try to make that writing effective. And you try to emulate it in your own writing. This method uses forms. Sometimes it uses lists of features to include in your writing. It's highly scaffolded. And sometimes all that scaffolding makes it's just too much help. In order to grow as a writer and internalize what you're learning and take it forward into your life as a skill, you have to grapple with your writing. If you just are able to copy a text or put your own words in a form, you're not going to really remember that necessarily. There are certain times you might, and in certain purposes, it's absolutely a perfect way to instruct. For example, when I was in high school, I learned how to write a business letter using a form. And I still remember that lesson to this day, and that was many years ago, and I still use the same form that I was taught way back then. So it is useful. There is a lot of good in it. There is a strong correlation between reading and writing ability. Now, reading a lot and reading well does not always translate into proficient writing. Writing requires writing. Writing requires practice. And that's why we're going to talk about the next method. Before we do, though, I'd like you to pause. You can look at the next slide, which will break down what I just talked about, maybe in a little bit more detail and with the written words in front of you. And then I'd like you to try and remember what we've talked about and write down some of the strengths and weaknesses of this method-based form of instruction. Thank you. The second method of writing instruction I want to talk to you about is the process method. This is the most common method of teaching writing in the United States today. To begin with, you pre-write. Pre-writing is a time where you brainstorm, or maybe you read a model text and discuss it with the class, identifying the strengths and weaknesses of it and how you might use them similarly. You research. You think about all the different ways you could go with the topic you're interested in, and you bounce ideas off of others, either as a whole group or in small groups. After you're done pre-writing, it's time to start drafting. And drafting is the fun part, especially the first time where you just get to let her rip and write and write and write whatever you want about the topic you're on. And also jot down questions and ideas for more research, different directions you might want to go. Once you're done drafting, it's time to look over that raw material. It's like clay in the hand of a sculptor. You want to make it beautiful, and that's what you're going to do next in the revising process. At first, you can personally revise your work, reading it aloud maybe to yourself, polishing it up here and there, incorporating some more research that you might want to follow up on. And then you share it with others. Read it aloud to your peers and let them give you their perception of what you've said. You may not have said exactly what you meant to say in your writing. And it's very important to know that what you mean to say is what other people are hearing. Take that feedback back and incorporate it in your writing to the extent you feel it's helpful and useful. You don't have to accept everything everybody says about your writing, but if they have real questions or misunderstandings, you do need to address those things and figure out a way to make yourself more clear, whether you do it the way they suggest or not. From there, you might want to meet with your teacher and have a conference, talk to them about your writing, about your peers' feedback, and revise again. And then you might even submit your work to a writing center and get their feedback and revise again. This is a process that can go on and on. Writing is a recursive process. That means it's just constantly being chiseled and molded and finessed until it's what you want it to be. And then when you finally get it where you want it, this is the fun part. You get to celebrate it. And you celebrate it by sharing it with your class or publishing it publicly. You want to use that work because, after all, you worked hard on it. It needs to be shared. When you get through with the next slide, please pause for a moment and brainstorm. Well, first write down the 4 steps to the writing process and brainstorm ways you might use it in your class. Thank you. The third method of writing instruction I want to talk to you about is the post-process method of writing instruction. It is the writing process, but it's the writing process with the twist that you want to make writing relevant to your students and to their real world lives. The first kind of way to do that I'm going to talk about is the post-composition project method. And this method involves students choosing a topic that they really care about and having them reflect on why it's important to them. Students should then identify relevant problems to the topic and start conducting research, and not just secondary research in the library, but primary research. The neat thing about the project-based method of teaching writing, is that you have a business type practical writing embedded in the course of writing something bigger, which makes it very real world feeling to students. They have to write to schedule appointments. They have to create interview questions. They need to create a research proposal. And these are all very practical forms of writing that they can take into their futures. Then there are other methods of using the process-based method. Those include writing for the public, like writing blogs. One of the articles I read talked about freshmen who talked about their transition to college. And they were able to share that publicly through a blog, and they found it much more meaningful than students who merely journaled about it. The school that I'm at now, we had a writing teacher who created a writing workshop that wrote plays for our school, and they produced those plays. And the teacher himself also went on to publish some fantasy novels based on writing that came out of that workshop. You can write to the newspaper, letters to the editor, anything to make that writing relevant to real life. That's essential to students finding it meaningful and taking it forward. Thank you so much for watching my presentation on teaching writing and the different methods that you can use to do so. I hope you found something valuable in the information that I shared, and I hope you'll take some time now that we're finished to just sit down and brainstorm ways you can make writing relevant to your students. That will make a huge difference in how they perceive your class. Good luck. God bless you. Good night.